Mr Debus reacted angrily to John Elliott's allegations that proposed tax changes would drive companies overseas.
Well, I think it's a pretty odd thing for somebody whose company is managing to pay 10 cents in the dollar to say in the first place. But secondly, the fact of the matter is that the long-term future of Australia requires that people invest in productive activity, even if profits are not as high as is conceivably possible in the first instance.
So John Elliott's going for short-term benefits, that's what you're saying?
Absolutely. If you think of the needs of our children, then you think about investing for the long term, not for a quick buck next year.
Mr Debus said that it is only by the training of more skilled people that Australia will be able to compete internationally. He said the theme of the 1987 summit reflects this concern. The summit is based on the need to coordinate regional training through the cooperation of industry, community bodies and educators. Organisers say that the economic and social change going on nationally also has implications for the region. They say the conference provides an opportunity for the region to take initiatives which will influence the nature and direction of this change. The second day of the two-day summit is May the 5th.
To the highest possible extent.
Laurie Brereton's decision brings to an end months of speculation by parties with a vested interest in the choice of route. The decision was a difficult one, as each option has its detractors. The Department of Main Roads received a record number of more than 600 submissions over this section of the F3 freeway. The eastern route was opposed by residents of Barnsley, Edgeworth and Killingworth. Coal companies lobbied against the central route. The western route was rejected by residents of West Wallsend, Holmesville and Seahampton. Today they appear the losers, though the group hasn't given up hope.
First of all, it's a recommendation. Now, Mr Brereton is recommending to Mr Morris, who's got all the money and who has the final say on the route, that the western route should be adopted.
Peter Morris has made it clear detailed plans for the western route must meet national highway standards. Today, groups opposed to the eastern and central options were cautiously pleased by Mr Brereton's recommendation. They believe the western route is the lesser of three evils.
Yes, because we've always said that the western route will have the least effect on the whole community, and we believe that wherever it goes there will be some effect on people wherever it goes. Yes.
Meanwhile, a suggestion that the DMR failed to consider a revised plan for the central route has been dismissed by the department. The DMR says it assessed and rejected the modified central option and recommended the western route to Mr Brereton.
According to Professor Parker, BHP is no worse or better than other large Australian companies. All seem to shy away from disclosing information about their workings and decisions. Australian companies disclose about 56% of their information. English companies, which are heavily regulated, divulge about 98%. And surprisingly, companies in the United States, which are less regulated, tell the public about 85% of their workings. Professor Parker says the companies have nothing to fear from this new openness. Do you believe it would be detrimental to BHP if they disclosed more?
No, I don't think necessarily so at all. I think what has to be recognised is that there are increasing demands from within the general community for corporations as a whole to be accountable to the whole of the general public. After all, a major corporation like BHP, as with many others, not only provides employment and economic benefits to the country, but they use labour and they use the economic infrastructure of a country, and therefore they are increasingly being required to be accountable both to their local community, to the public at large, to the electorate, to the government regulators and so on.
concrete is being used to construct a suspended slab, which will be the ground floor of the Queen's Wharf complex. The two-storey building, which will house shops and restaurants, will extend to the outer pylons. Then a wharf will be built a further 23 metres out to allow vessels to make short stays.
Today's the first of a 7-month program. Today's pour will go on until about 2:30, but following that there'll be a 14-day cure period and reconstruction of the formwork, and that process will go on for 7 months.
While the wharf is on schedule and going ahead full steam, the walkway from the mall to the new complex is also making some headway. A section of Market Street has been cordoned off to allow workmen to lay the foundations for the overhead footbridge. While the project is due to be completed by the end of December, Alderman Nichols says the shops and the restaurants probably won't be operational until mid-January.
It was June 1985 that the first piles were driven to support the massive structure that constitutes the continuous bloom caster. It's the biggest of its type in the world, designed by Japanese firm Kobe Steel, and is vital to the future of steelmaking in Newcastle. Computerised control combined with highly refined techniques mean a minimum of manpower, essential in improving efficiency in this highly internationally competitive industry. The General Manager of BHP's Rod and Bar Products Division, Bill Farrens, says it will provide the ability to make high-quality steel consistently with the competitive edge to survive in the world market. Basically, it works this way. Molten steel is brought by ladle from the BOS department and tipped into a tundish, from where it gravitates down 4 tubes, which mould and cool it into 4 continuous blooms. These are cut into 6-metre lengths while on the move and are then taken down roller conveyors to the number 2 bloom mill. The first test revealed some minor problems, according to caster superintendent Brian Kelly.
There were some computer software problems, which means that the systems analysts have got to go and see where the problems were. There were some cabling problems in which cables were exposed to heat and they started to heat up and give us problems. Very few minor problems overall.
Bringing the $110 million project to fruition on time and within budget has meant an enormous boost in the morale of the works, typified in the smile on Brian Kelly's face.
Well, actually, I've been with the project since 1981, so I feel a lot of elation about seeing the project coming to completion.
The May Day march proceeded down Hunter Street to the city's mall. It is traditionally a day for labour celebrations and parades, a custom which started in America, where workers fed up with 12-hour days and 6-day working weeks organised to fight for an 8-hour day. May Day spread to become an international celebration, symbolising the push by workers for better living standards. In Australia, May Day has been celebrated now for over 100 years.
The government kept control of the celebrations by banning all outdoor rallies, so workers recognised the labour movement's most important day inside. Meanwhile, Archbishop Desmond Tutu has urged all whites against apartheid to boycott next week's election. The campaigning for the election has begun in earnest, with President Botha's main rival, former Ambassador to Britain Dennis Worrell, recruiting the support of champion golfer Gary Player. In Washington, it seems like neither Japanese Prime Minister Nakasone nor US President Reagan have achieved their goals, but a compromise has been struck. Following talks, President Reagan has promised to review the tough trade sanctions against Japan within 2 weeks. And Prime Minister Nakasone says he'll look into the alleged breach of trade agreements. Mr Nakasone's case was not helped by the disclosure that Japan's trade surplus has climbed to $100 billion, while the US trade deficit stands on $166 billion. At the public inquiry into the Herald of Free Enterprise disaster, the bosun, whose job it is to close the bow doors, has admitted to falling asleep. 28-year-old Mark Stanley, in what his counsel has described as a courageous admission, says that he knew it was his duty to make sure the doors were closed, and he didn't do so. He says he dozed off, and when he woke, it was dark, and he immediately remembered that he hadn't closed the doors.
Most of us picture camping and getting into the great outdoors as synonymous with discomfort and at least one wet night spent in hammering in pegs or tying down an annex. Members of the Campervan and Motorhome Club of Australia, however, believe in doing their trips in relative comfort by keeping the travelling and camping all in one vehicle. The club was formed a year ago and this is their third national gathering. Campers travelled from all over Australia to catch up on what's happening in the campervan world and swap yarns about places they've seen and roads they've driven. For many, it's a home away from home and must have all the modern conveniences. In fact, as far as the club's concerned, it's the only way to go.
So you think that you've got the best way of camping tied up here?
There's absolutely no doubt about that, and I think if you ask any number of the folk around here, they'll say exactly the same thing. It's really wonderful, the degree of enthusiasm that comes with this type of vehicle.
The big advantage of the new private hospital is that for simple surgery, patients can be admitted and discharged on the same day. Day surgery originated in the United States, where it now caters for more than 40% of all elective surgery performed there. Colin Rogers, the General Manager of NIB Health Funds, says the escalation in hospital costs and problems within the public hospital system during the past 2 years have made day surgery a popular option. The hospital on the corner of Griffiths and Lambton Roads at Waratah cost $1 million to build and equip. It accepted its first patients today. The hospital is available to all members of the public, not just NIB members, and expects to carry out 3,500 to 4,000 operations each year.
When Primary Industry Minister John Kerrin visited the Hunter Valley last month, dairy farmers were angry about the state of their industry. They believed it unfair that they were paying a levy to support Victorian dairy farmer exports when the Victorians were flooding the New South Wales market with cheap milk. Since then, New South Wales Agriculture Minister Jack Hallam has withdrawn the levy. According to the General Manager of the New South Wales Dairy Corporation, Bob Wan, it's gone a long way in improving the situation. He says although the long-term outlook for the New South Wales dairy industry is good, it won't be plain sailing, and the key to success will be diversification.
Where we have sections of the community that need high calcium, we have special high calcium milks. Where we have people that need low-fat milks, we produce the low-fat milks, so that we develop the product to meet the unique requirements of particular sections of the market.
Obvious problem that
the traffic study report was carried out by an independent firm of consultants as requested by the Port Stephens Shire Council. The results showed that in 7 years' time, the commercial business district would suffer greater traffic congestion problems as tourism to the area increased. To alleviate the problem, a bypass along Dowling Street has been recommended, which would redirect the traffic along the outskirts to Fingal and Charles Bay. To fund the project, the report recommends that a levy of $27 a square metre be imposed on all future developments in the Nelson Bay district. While Deputy Town Planner Steve O'Connor outlined the report's findings, local business people voiced their concern against the added levy, claiming they're being forced to pay for redirecting business away from the main shopping centre. President of the Nelson Bay and District Chamber of Commerce, Jeff McClellan, says the extra levy would cripple future development.
There will be no development. Thirdly, there's no development now. We just can't see, unless someone's going to come in with multi-million dollars, we'll just buy out the whole of the commercial area, then maybe commercial development will go ahead. But it will certainly ruin, for the likes of small businessman or small future businessman.
The traffic report is on display at the Port Stephens Council chambers for the next 21 days, until the matter goes before Council for its decision.
Of the total cost would be contributed by the Council.
Police were called to Mayfield after residents reported hearing rifle shots. A 17-year-old youth had been shot in the leg during a dispute between two other men. Police later surrounded a Myola Street house where a man armed with a rifle had barricaded himself. After a tense 7 hours, police ended the siege by throwing tear gas into the house. Inside, it's alleged they found a man under a bed with a rifle and a large supply of ammunition. Today, a 43-year-old Vietnamese man appeared in Newcastle local court. He was charged with 2 counts of shooting with intent to murder and 2 counts of shooting with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. He was also charged with assault and with using a firearm in a public place. The case was adjourned until next Wednesday and Lee remanded in custody after bail was refused. Magistrate Cleary said the charges were very serious, that there was a fear of further violence and a possibility that Lee might not turn up again if granted bail.
The process of acquiring houses began back in 1983 with the Newcastle City Council's plans to upgrade Thomas Street. So far, 20 houses have been resumed. The DMR says it needs at least another 19 more and perhaps even twice as many as that to make way for the planned link roads. During the 1983 EIS on the Wallsend area, one of the strongest complaints from residents was about the possibility of increased noise levels. But Phil Gallagher from the DMR says that won't be a problem with this proposal.
We believe that the improved standard of road that we will provide will in fact reduce noise levels.
There were 5 options the DMR considered, but on the grounds of the least impact on the environment and the community, as well as being the most economical, the Thomas Street-Cowper Street proposal was favoured. If adopted by the Minister, the link road will leave the F3 freeway at Estelville and end up at Wallsend. 2 roads, Cowper Street, which will be widened across the tram reserve, will take traffic to the yet-to-be-built State Highway 23 and out to Sandgate, and Thomas Street will be widened to allow motorists an easier access to Newcastle City along Newcastle Road. Alderman Vic Bell, who has been long involved with road planning, says that residents should keep a level head when sending in submissions.
Now have the opportunity to lodge their objections, but I think they should keep in mind that the present volumes of traffic using many of the main roads, which will be under consideration up here, certainly are not suitable for the volumes that are being carried. And they must consider whether it's preferable to have roads constructed that will be designed to carry those volumes of traffic, minimise grades so that there will be minimal interference with the normal daily quality of life, as they say.
Submissions for the proposed Wallsend Link Road close on June 12th.
The music video gained Flora national attention, but Governor Jim Thompson so far seems unimpressed. So now Flora has taken the next logical step and held an Is You Is Day, complete with motorcade, marching band, local civic talent, someone to keep the rain off their parade, and someone to keep everyone in a good mood. Is this the end? No, there's more. For the grand finale, the stars of Flora's music video performed for the first time in front of a live audience.
I'm Willie, the chief of staff. My last name's Thompson, just like you. Is we is, or is we isn't. Gonna get ourselves a prison.
All right, now what if the worst possible thing happens and somebody else gets the prison? Then what happens? Do you and Charlie join the barbed wire choir, take it on the road?
Well, we're not going to give up, you know, and we're not going to lay down if we do not get the prison. We're just going to work a little harder. And we feel like, you know, any advertisement that we get is good for the city. Perhaps some industry might become attracted to us because of this.
Okay. I'm Charlie, mayor of the town. People call from miles around. Is we is or is we isn't going to get ourselves a prison?
What more can you do? Is this the last big effort to convince the governor to put the prison here?
Oh, we're not done yet. If this doesn't work, we'll come up with a sequel to the other video. We'll keep right on until he eventually makes up his mind that Flora is a place to put a prison.
For many, this exhibition will bring home the history of the region. This painting by deaf-mute artist Alfred Sharp, painted in 1907, shows cedar being hauled by steamboat down the Patterson River. Sharp also painted the scene of the common between Glebe, where Glebe Road is today, and the Adamstown Piers. This watercolour, painted by Albert Henry Fullwood, is a scene of early Newcastle from Nobbies, not long after the breakwater that joins Nobbies to the mainland was built. Another rare work is this oil painting by Conrad Martins of Tarlee House in the western reaches of Port Stephens. Commissioned by Rear Admiral Philip King in 1847, the painting is revered because it was done by Australia's first professional artist. The exhibition will be at Cooks Hill Gallery until June 1st. Meanwhile, at the Region Art Gallery, a change of pace. An exhibition of jewellery, hollowware and sculptures by Sydney artists Helga Larson and Darren Lewis will be opened on Sunday. The strong lines of the jewellery highlights Helga's Danish upbringing and influence. Much of the jewellery is kinetic, with free hanging parts that move with the wearer. The display shows the couple's work since their marriage, and the jewellery making partnership began 25 years ago.